Hello guys, it's me, Pixie, and today is Halloween, so I hope you are having a fun time there. In Ukraine, we do not celebrate it as much. It is not our traditional holiday, but a lot of us still love this spooky day. Today's video will be something not specifically creepy related, but I hope it is still an interesting topic. Have you played Dungeons and Dragons? Or maybe you heard about bards? You know those cheery fellows who are singing and dancing? It was quite random, but I decided to make a doll that resembles this profession. I had an old concept art that I reworked completely to adjust the design to my current liking. And while I was creating the doll, I was thinking about the whole concept of bards. Who are they in the real world? What they were actually doing and so on. And I found quite an interesting article about them and was surprised by how their meaning completely differs from everything I knew about them before. I love bards as a concept in D&D, but not as much as a playable class, so I decided to dig deeper and learn about their origins. The word bard has been used in many different ways over time, often inaccurately or inconsistently. Its meaning depends on the speaker's era, culture, and context. Even scholars have confused things by using the term too loosely, and modern writers often oversimplify it further. The term bard is something equated with poet, and in certain contexts that fits, but the reverse isn't always true. The Welsh tradition with its strict poetic forms illustrates this well. Every bard had to master 24 styles to earn the title, yet the word still simply translates as a poet. Modern authors define bard and poet in various ways. Robert Graves in The White Goddess contrasts inspired muse poets with more conventional Apollonian poets. Geoffrey Ashe in The Discovery of King Arthur uses bard broadly, describing druids as an educated elite. Priests, scholars, bards, consular and seers, whose greatest school were in Britain. Many today view true bards as historically connected to Druidic and related pre-Christian Celtic religions. Bards were believed to possess magical powers and a partial ability to predict the future. In ancient Greece, professional storytellers were called rhapsodes and sometimes organized into groups. Homer is often called a bard, despite later Greeks criticizing poets for straying from rationality. In Odyssey, for example, Themios, Demodocus and Medon are bards. While the legendary Orpheus, famed for his lyre, who has been advanced to the rank of demigod by several classical sources, was noted as a musician of such power and sweetness that even the wild creatures would gather to listen to him. In ancient classical mythology, patrons of the bardic arts included Dionysus, Apollo, the Muses, Pan, the Graces, Liber, and Chiron. Chiron in particular was regarded as the source of the arts of healing and music, and some modern scholars link him to the shamanic traditions of horse nomad medicine men among the early ancestors of Greek cultures. Lucan, a 5th century Latin author, referred to the national poets and musicians of Gaul and Britain as bardi. In Gaelic Celtic clans, each chieftain has a household bard, who even into 18th century sung the clan's lineage in deeds in Irish or Gaelic. Bards were considered the most influential and conservative elements of Celtic society. The Oxford English Dictionary supports the view of the bard as poet and musician, often linked with prophetic ability. The word bard comes from Gaelic, Irish, Welsh, Latin and Old Celtic. Its primary definition: an ancient Celtic order of minstrel poets who composed and sung verses, usually to the harp, celebrating chiefs and warriors, preserving history, laws, religion precepts, and genealogies. The Encyclopaedia Britannica lists many figures we would call true bards under minstrel. Minstrel derives from the same Latin root as minister, which originally meant particularly and specifically servant. So a minstrel can be seen as one who serves through music. By the late 15th century, printing shifted minstrels' focus towards instrumental performance, reducing the oral tradition. So the so-called hedge bards deserve serious attention. They preserved true bardic traditions after pagan and druidic schools were disbanded or absorbed by Christian influence. True bards or muse poets were almost always male. Exceptions existed, including wise women entertainers and pre-Christian priestesses. Tradition suggests that women were sometimes the norm as bards. Tracking lineages is difficult, partly because some bardic traditions forbade marriage. The male dominance of bards was most evident in cultures with patriarchal religion and inheritance laws, though record keepers like monks may have influenced this perception. Originally linked to goddess worship, bards also honored the female principle. While oral tradition preserves much, scholars favor manuscripts, where women bards are mostly absent. Evidence exists confirming that women were fully trained bards. For example, one of the 7 harpers at an 18th century Irish gathering preserving oral repertoire was a woman. Additional notes highlight the systematic destruction of records by church authorities and officials, often to enforce inheritance rules or suppress prior claims. Historically, the bardic tradition is often portrayed as male-dominated, but evidence and reasoning suggest women also held bardic roles. But in rich Celtic traditions, women enjoyed considerable social and creative freedom. It is reasonable to conclude that women must have practiced bardic arts, preserving their own stories and versions of events. The Lathero home, the grief over a child lost too soon, and surely many other chronicled intimate joys and sorrows of daily life. It is equally implausible that the rich folk music of the remote British Isles was created solely by men. After all, folk music in its essence is the truest survival of the bardic gift, preserving knowledge, memory, and human experience. The practitioner of the bardic arts has been a valued member of the community. So much so, in fact, that poets have been blinded, strong men deliberately lamed by hamstring, and even fierce battles fought over the right to keep a particular bard in residence. Competition and attendant danger for the targeted bards became so fierce and sometimes in places that it became necessary for bards to reserve themselves the right of free passage, to come or go as they please, among other rights and defined responsibilities. As group bards would enforce this by imposition of a ban against performances and other bardic services, including their priestly functions, upon the lands and holdings of any who violated this most basic of bardic rights. For those not familiar with religious history, note that this method, often referred to simply as the ban, was also adopted for the use by Catholic Church, against the lands of excommunicated nobles at more than one time and place. Bard's skill in satire was a feared weapon. In Welsh tradition, when a famous bard was offended by a prince, the prince was at risk of being satirized to the value of 100 stacks. In Ireland, one bard so powerfully satirized an inhospitable king that the monarch was forced to abdicate in favor of more generous ruler. Legend held that powerful bards could even cause blisters on a person through the intensity of their performance. Welsh bards were believed to draw inspiration and power from the Avon, a divine force that elevated them beyond normal abilities. In this ecstatic trance, a bard could act as a prophet or at times a type of spirit medium. In the poem Battle of the Forest and other sources, bards were said to have the power to transform into any animal, human or natural feature, through both supernatural forces and personal will. They were also believed capable of sending their spirit from their body to travel through time and space, gaining knowledge firsthand. As priests in the pre-Christian faith, bards were linked to the gods, much like shamans in ecstasy were identified with the divine. In locations such Caidir Idris or beneath the Black Stone of Ardu on Mount Snowdon, it was believed that spending a night there could transform a person into either a madman or a bard. The Triduan, a 3-day ritual fast, was used to induce ecstatic trance and visions, a practice later absorbed into British and Irish church rituals with few alterations. Fasting for visionary purposes was common in many ancient and primitive cultures. A great bard's income could be astonishing indeed. 100 horses, cloaks and bracelets amount with 50 brooches and magnificent sword, cattle, meat, oil and even serfs were also included in rewards. Bards in ancient Britain held a special status. Alongside smith and language scholars, they were legally exempt from slavery. Rosario di Palermo's Collegium Gradium presentation notes that poets were long viewed with suspicion by both church and state. Even before Christianity, Plato and Socrates condemned poetry as an imitation rather than truth and as morally dangerous. Throughout their life, they might serve as mediator, judge, arbitrator, lawkeeper, satirist, poet, musician, storyteller, historian, herald, healer, teacher, priest, linguist, craftsman, genealogist, scout, or even a spy, preserving wisdom, law, and culture through word and song. An important responsibility was preserving genealogies, which provided historical continuity and context when written records were scarce. Through song or scroll, bards ensured that ancestry linked people to significant events and lineages. Genealogical knowledge was essential for maintaining order and succession within tribes and clans. With frequent deaths from war or disease, successors were often chosen from collateral family lines, making proof of lineage critical. A person's relationship to a ruling house determined their social rank, sitting at the lord's table, marriage prospects, service eligibility, and even access to education. As peacemakers, bards were both mediators and inspirers of courage. Legends tell of times when two armed hosts stood ready for battle only to have the bard's song steal their weapons. The words carrying the authority to turn wrath into reconciliation. In many cultures, the medicine man or shaman fulfilled the bardic role of a teacher and keeper of knowledge, educating youth through story and song. Healing rites often combine chants, drums, rattles, clappers, and harps, calling upon divine powers through rhythm and ritual. Like Celtic bards who viewed satire as a tool of influence, some Eskimo tribes settled disputes through drumming contests, where rivals mocked each other in song to expose faults and release tension without bloodshed. By the late 20th century, scholars began to recognize that in many so-called primitive societies, music was not an art form but a living force, an expression of life itself. It was prized not for beauty but for power and effectiveness. For the individual, music brought strength. For the community, it served as bridge to the divine, a way to seek favor, healing, and protection. Music was inherently religious and functional, mirroring each tribe's beliefs, hopes, and reverence towards the unseen world. Scholars have often portrayed bards as unlettered. Among the Celts, druids and bards were strictly forbidden from recording certain secret knowledge. Yet formal learning was still practiced and encouraged. Julius Caesar noted that druids memorized vast numbers of verses, some studying for 20 years. He also described druids as teachers of youth, with the Celtic day beginning at sunset. In the times of peace, the king drew moral support from their court bards. The bards were prominent figures. Entertainers certainly, but more than that, inheriting some of the druids' functions. They were also the authorities on customs, precedents, and pedigrees. Their poems sung to music extolled the royal patrons and projected the king's image as a man of august descent, martial renown, bounty, and so forth. In Ireland, the term bard referred to poets who had not yet reached the rank of Olaf, having completed only part of the full 12-year course of the study and memorization. Despite the shorter training, they were considered comparable in skill to full-rank bards. Olaf held a status equal to kings and queens and were among the few allowed to wear more than 5 colors simultaneously. Early ballads, loosely defined as songs telling self-contained stories, emerged in feudal times, condensing episodes from long epics into performances lasting minutes rather than hours. Over time, they grew more realistic, personal, and diverse in subject. As ballads became increasingly popular, they influenced new generation and emerging schools linked to ancient bardic traditions, including troubadours, trouveres, and minstrels. Printed broadside ballads emerged in the early 16th century, signaling a further decline for wandering minstrels and traditional bards. Over the centuries, popular imagination has often painted bards as disreputable rogues, womanizers, heavy drinkers, and opportunistic ne'er-do-wells, just as likely to abscond with a host's daughter or silver as to entertain with songs and stories. Many of the negative stereotypes about bards arise from conflating them with the less principled wandering entertainers of later ages, rather than reflecting the disciplined, trained bards of old. Early bards often participated in fertility rites, such as Beltane fires and Great Rite, which were sexual in nature. Later Christian writers misrepresented these practices as moral failings. In medieval times, wandering minstrels sometimes attracted attention from young women simply because they were more courteous, attentive, and clean than the typical squire or servant. In cultures where illegitimacy was less stigmatized, children born from these encounters were sometimes encouraged to become bards themselves. Many bards, however, lived celibate or faithful lives. Drunkenness and rowdiness were mostly traits of the untrained minstrels, not true bards. Even so, bards in ritual of priestly roles sometimes ingested intoxicants as part of their duties. Vagabond minstrels harmed the reputation of bards. True bards entrusted with keeping the custom often served as arbiters, judges, and advisors and held secure patronage. They had little reason to abandon their positions unless provoked by patron's actions. In short, the disciplined, multifunctional bard was far removed from the roving, often unruly entertainer who gave rise to the stereotypes. The seeming loss of the true bard in modern society raises question about what role poetry, storytelling, and oral tradition now play. Robert Graves argued that the function of the poetry has not changed. It remains an invocation of the muse, a means to experience exaltation and horror. But its context has shifted. Where once poetry reminded humanity to live in harmony with the natural and spiritual world, today it exists in civilization that has largely commodified or industrialized nature and ritual. Sacred symbols and practices have been secularized, displaced by circuses, canneries, and sawmills. The modern loss of the bard thus represents not just the decline of a profession, but a reduction in the society's active engagements with memory, ritual, and the sacred dimension of language. Oral tradition and poetry, once central to maintaining social ethical reflection and cultural knowledge, have largely been replaced by written and mechanized forms of communication, leaving us with echoes of the bardic function rather than its living practice. Bards have always been shaped by their audiences and societies. They remain the voices that reflect and define their times. Even in the modern age, the bardic spirit endures. O'Carolan is remembered as Ireland's last traditional harper, yet many later artists have carried the mantle in new forms. The simplest answer is that a bard is someone who can use not only music to make magic. Exactly how that's done is difficult to explain if you haven't experienced it. In this modern age, those who call themselves bards strive to reclaim something once thought lost to the time and civilization's rush forward. Our success is not measured by others, but by the truth we feel within ourselves. Ultimately, a bard today is whatever one's believes is required to live as a bard. Some may be born to it, some trained, and some simply become so. But all share that unmistakable pull at the heart when they hear the timeless words. So you wish to be a bard. So you wish to be a bard, young one? Well, listen to my tale. A tale that's riddled with success, and yet the times that I have failed. A storyteller tells his tales until the morning light, each line in verse the one that you'll remember through the night. A troubadour will sing and play to make the people laugh and weep, and feel the feelings he does feel until they go to sleep. A musician has the talent to make music with his art, and let his songs reverberate to touch the mind and heart. A minstrel must do all these things and do them very well, but a bard must also do them, and between 'tis hard to tell. For a minstrel and bard could be the same in word and voice, but the difference between the two is matter of their choice. A minstrel's job to entertain, a bard's to educate, to urge the man on for honor and love, and not for malice or hate. A minstrel will sing only songs to please his audience well. A bard must choose most carefully the tales that he will tell. For in your words you have the power to make or break a man, and all his good and evil deeds are yours to praise or damn. So use your power carefully and wisely use your art. For those they might prefer a minstrel's voice, 'tis you must touch their heart. And if the talent is not yours to move the souls of men, then call yourself a minstrel and no dishonor do intend. For when a bard does sing a song, the story they do hear, and yet the choice is for a minstrel when the song must please the ear. So entertain, young minstrel, or educate, young bard. But either path or either life you'll find may be too hard. For when the storm is blowing and the rain comes down in sheets, 'tis 10 more leagues that you must go to sing for bread and meat. And when the road is lonely and you have no place called home, remember that it was your choice to travel and to roam. And when you think of lady loves and all the things you lack, remember, sir, the one you always carry on your back. And remember too this one last thing when your journey you begin. A minstrel does not scream or shout to carry over the din. A bard is not a storyteller or harper playing long. A minstrel's job it is to sing, a bard to be the song. Poem by Raphael Dunois, The Black Bard of Meredith. So, hope you liked today's video, guys, cause I really enjoyed creating this doll. She's the first project based fully on my concept I created in a long time, so I'm a bit worried. It was a long time since I created dolls just for the sake of creativity and not a commissioned one. This doll I put on sale on my Instagram, so if you wish to have a little horned bard on your shelf singing your inspirational songs, let me know. She can be yours, just DM me. And now I want to say thank you for staying here with me today watching this video. I hope to see you soon in my next videos. Have a sweet day with all the Halloween treats you got for yourself, and if you have none, then let this video be the one for you from me. Bye!
kinalaya tapan mo.
Wish I was on yonder hill, 'cause there I'd sit and cry my fill, until every tear would turn a mill. Is good to Vernon Slun. She will ruin, she'll go sucker. Oh, 'cause she'll go keen, she'll go duru, so go Sally Glum. Is good to Vernon Slun. I'll sell my rock, I'll sell my reel, I'll sell my only spinning wheel to buy my love. A sword of steel is good to my burning slun. She will ruin, she'll go sucker. Oh, 'cause she'll go keen, she'll go duru, so go Sally Glum is good to my burning slun. I wish in vain, I wish I had my heart again, and vainly think I'd not complain. It's good to my burning slun. She will ruin, she'll go sucker. Oh, 'cause she'll go keen, she'll go duru, so go Sally Glum. It's good to my burning slun.
But now my love has gone to France to try his fortune to advance. If he e'er comes back, 'tis but a chance. His good day to move on in Slán. She will ruin. She will go sucker, she will go yoon. She'll go duru, so go Sally Glum. It's good day to move on in Slán. She'll ruin. She will go sucker, she will go yoon. She will go duru, so go Sally Glum. It's a good day to move on in Slán.